There comes a moment in every person's life when the weight they carry becomes heavier than the steps they are trying to take. Worry grows silently, like a shadow that clings to the edges of the mind, whispering doubts, exaggerating fears, distorting what is real into something far more intimidating. It convinces you that you must be constantly alert, constantly tense, constantly preparing for dangers that may never come. Yet the truth is far simpler and far more profound. Life begins to move in your favor the moment you release the inner tension you have wrapped around yourself like armor. Worry is not a protector, it is a jailer. It binds the imagination to the worst-case scenario and blinds the individual to the possibilities that quietly present themselves. When a person becomes overly identified with their worries, they lose sight of their own strength. They forget the natural intelligence that lives within them, the intuition that quietly knows what the conscious mind struggles to grasp. Worry drowns out that inner voice, replacing it with noise that imitates logic but is rooted in fear. To stop worrying does not mean to become careless or indifferent. It means to stop tormenting yourself with futures that do not exist. It means realizing that the greater part of your suffering is created in the mind long before any external event has the chance to touch you. When you loosen your grip on imaginary catastrophes, you begin to notice how life supports you in small, almost invisible ways. Doors open that were once unnoticed. Opportunities appear where moments before there were only obstacles. This is not magic, but clarity that emerges when the mind is no longer clouded by its own projection. The human psyche responds to openness. When you stop tightening yourself against the world, life has room to breathe through you. When you stop insisting that danger is everywhere, you rediscover curiosity. You move with more fluidity, more trust, more authenticity. And in this state, your decisions become wiser because they are no longer born from panic, but from a deeper center within you. This inner center does not shout, it guides. It does not frighten, it steadies. When you listen to it, your actions become aligned with who you truly are rather than who your fears try to convince you to be. Worry is a form of self-betrayal. It convinces you that you are fragile when in truth you are capable of far more than you imagine. It whispers that life is against you, when in reality life is waiting for you to participate in it without resistance. Every time you trust yourself even a little, you withdraw energy from the cycle of fear, you return strength to your own hands. The world responds to your inner state. A conflicted mind sees conflict everywhere. A fearful mind interprets everything as threat. But when the mind becomes calm, the world mirrors that calmness. You begin to notice solutions instead of problems, patterns instead of chaos, meaning instead of randomness. Challenges still come, of course, but you face them with a steadiness that transforms their nature. They no longer overwhelm you, they shape you. Letting go of worry does not guarantee an easy life, but it guarantees a more authentic one. It frees you from the exhausting habit of fighting ghosts. It allows you to reclaim the energy that worry has stolen and redirect it toward creation, growth, and understanding. The moment you stop feeding fear, something extraordinary happens. The world becomes less hostile, your path becomes clearer, and the things you once believed impossible begin to unfold with surprising ease. When you stop worrying, everything does not magically become perfect, but everything begins to work with a certain harmony, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Your perception shifts, your choices strengthen, and your inner life aligns with the direction life is already trying to take you. Peace is not the absence of challenge, it is the absence of unnecessary fear. And when fear loosens its grip, life moves. This is the quiet miracle that begins the moment you decide to step out of the prison of worry and walk into the world with trust. To release worries, to step back from the inner tension that has slowly become a silent companion in your daily life, a companion so familiar that you may not even notice how tightly it grips your thoughts. When worry dominates the mind, it narrows your vision until the world appears filled with only threats, complications, and unknowns that seem too heavy to approach. Yet beneath that layer of anxiety, there exists an inner intelligence that has been guiding you long before you became aware of it. This quiet guidance is not loud or forceful. It does not demand attention the way fear does. It lives deep within, waiting patiently for the noise of worry to subside so it can be heard. When you finally release the cycle of overthinking, the fog that surrounds, your perception begins to lift, revealing a clarity that was always present. But obscured by fear-driven projections, worry thrives on imagined scenarios, on possibilities that have no grounding in your present moment. It convinces you that by rehearsing every potential disaster, You are preparing yourself, but this rehearsal only drains your energy and dims your inner light. The moment you let go even a fraction, your mind opens space to recognize insights that your intuition has been offering all along. This inner guidance works quietly, without drama. It does not need panic to function, it needs openness. When you loosen your attachment to worry, you create the psychological room necessary for this deeper knowing to emerge with more strength. There is a natural clarity within each person that cannot be accessed when the mind is tangled in fear. Worry creates turbulence, and a turbulent mind cannot reflect reality accurately. But once the mind becomes still, you begin to see patterns, options, and solutions that were previously invisible. Calmness does not weaken your awareness, it enhances it. It sharpens your perception, allowing you to detect details you were previously too overwhelmed to notice. This clarity is not intellectual alone. It is instinctive, intuitive, rooted in a deeper layer of the psyche that understands connections beyond the reach of conscious reasoning. When you stop feeding worry, you begin to understand how often your fears were exaggerations of misunderstood information. How many times have you imagined the worst only to discover that reality was far simpler, far kinder than your mind predicted? Each time this happens, a truth becomes more apparent. Your worries are not protectors. They are distortions. They convince you that danger is everywhere, when in fact the majority of your challenges are manageable once approached with a steady mind. The more you recognize this pattern, the more naturally you begin to loosen your hold on unnecessary fear releasing. Worry is also an act of trust, not in blind luck, but in the deeper structures of your own psyche. There is a part of you that has navigated every difficult moment, every challenge, every uncertainty you have ever faced. Yet worry tries to erase this history, making you believe that you are always on the brink of collapse. When you silence that narrative, you reconnect with the part of yourself that has always been capable, always adaptive, always more resilient than your fears would admit. This self-trust does not grow through anxiety, but through allowing yourself the space to experience your own competence. Inner guidance becomes clearer when you are not in constant conflict with imaginary futures. It is in moments of calm that you remember who you are and what you are capable of. You begin to act from a place of groundedness rather than desperation. Decisions become less frantic and more aligned with your values and direction. You start to understand that clarity comes not from trying to control every outcome, but from aligning yourself with the deeper currents already flowing within you. These currents have been shaping your intuition, your insights, your instincts long before worry learned to speak loudly in your mind. The process of releasing worry is not a single action, but a gradual unbinding. Each time you question a fearful thought rather than obey it, you weaken its hold. Each time you choose presence over catastrophic imagining, you strengthen the intuitive voice within. With practice, this voice grows, and what once felt faint becomes a powerful source of orientation. You begin to move with a sense of internal direction that does not depend on external validation or perfect certainty. Instead, it relies on a deeper confidence, a knowing that cannot be accessed when worry dominates your internal world. Calmness becomes a form of intelligence, one that allows you to perceive life as it is rather than through the lens of fear. When you achieve this degree of openness, you notice how many opportunities were always there, waiting for your attention. You realize how much energy you once spent rehearsing dangers that never arrived. You understand how many decisions were influenced not by truth but by distortion. And as you let go, even slowly, you begin to feel life responding. Not because it suddenly becomes easier, but because you are no longer resisting the natural guidance that has been within you the entire time. Releasing worry is a return to alignment with your deeper self. It is a recognition that clarity is not created through tension but through presence. It is an acknowledgement that your inner guidance, once freed from the noise of fear, is capable of directing you with far greater accuracy than constant anxiety ever could. It is the quiet understanding that life does not require you to anticipate every possible danger. It only requires you to meet each moment with the full presence of who you are, unburdened by the weight of imagined catastrophes. Fear-created illusions have a way of becoming so convincing that they appear as absolute truths, shaping your perception long before you have the chance to question them. The mind, when worried, begins to fabricate images of outcomes that feel real, even though they have no foundation in the present moment. These illusions operate like shadows cast on the walls of the psyche, distorting reality and magnifying everything that could possibly go wrong. When fear takes hold, it narrows your awareness until all you can see are imagined dangers, and in that constricted state, you miss the subtle invitations that life extends to you. Opportunities are not absent. They become invisible behind the veil of fear's projections, and the more you feed those projections, the thicker the veil becomes. When the mind is dominated by fear, it stops observing and starts inventing. It generates stories, scenarios, and anxieties that are disconnected from your actual circumstances. These internal narratives grow louder and more persuasive, blurring the boundary between what is real and what is merely imagined. You begin to behave as if these illusions are facts, as if the world is filled with threats you must guard against at every moment. Yet if you were to pause and examine these narratives carefully, you would often find that they are built not on evidence but on the momentum of old fears, unresolved experiences, or moments when your mind tried to protect you by anticipating the worst. Fear confuses preparation with pessimism, convincing you that imagining catastrophe is a form of safety, but fear's predictions rarely match the reality that unfolds. Most of the events you worry about do not happen, and when challenges do arise, they are often manageable in ways you did not expect. The mind exaggerates because fear thrives on intensity. It needs your attention, and the easiest way for it to claim that attention is to create dramatic images of the future. Yet these images act as blindfolds. When your focus is consumed by what might go wrong, you lose sight of what might go right. The opportunities around you do not disappear. You simply lose the capacity to notice them amidst the mental noise. Life tends to offer possibilities quietly, subtly, through moments, encounters, and intuition that require a clear mind to perceive. Calmness has a way of dissolving fear's illusions. When you step out of the emotional storm and allow your mind to settle, the distortions begin to fade. Suddenly, situations that once appeared overwhelming reveal themselves as solvable. Paths that once seemed closed show openings. You start to realize that fear is not a lens through which to understand life, but a fog that disorients your judgment. With calmness, you regain perspective. You see choices rather than crises, options rather than obstacles. The mind, freed from the grip of fear, becomes capable of recognizing opportunities that were always present. But concealed beneath anxiety's projections, opportunities rarely announce themselves with force. They come in the form of insights, gentle nudges, coincidences that prompt curiosity, or moments when you feel unexpectedly drawn towards something. When fear dominates, these signals are drowned out. You dismiss them, overlook them, or interpret them as risks rather than invitations. A fearful mind assumes that anything unknown must be dangerous, and so it rejects possibilities before they even have a chance to unfold. But when calmness enters, your perception expands. You become more receptive, more observant, more capable of noticing the subtle currents of life. You start recognizing that opportunities often arrive disguised as small moments that require a degree of inner quiet to appreciate. Fear-created illusions do not only block opportunities in the external world, they also hinder the opportunities within yourself. They make you doubt your abilities, question your worth, and underestimate your resilience. They convince you that you are unprepared when you are capable, that you are alone when you are supported, that you are fragile when you possess strength you have not yet discovered. These illusions shrink your confidence and shrink your imagination, trapping you in a narrow perception of who you are and what you can achieve. When you let fear dictate your view of yourself, you become disconnected from your inner potential. But when you calm your mind, you begin to feel the depth of your own capability rising to the surface. There is an intelligence within you that fear tries to overshadow. It is the part of you that knows how to navigate uncertainty without collapsing into panic. It is the part that has guided you through every challenge you have faced, even the ones you thought you could not overcome. This inner intelligence does not communicate through panic or exaggeration. It speaks through clarity, intuition, and subtle awareness. When you are calm, you reconnect with this guidance. You begin to trust yourself more. You stop relying on fear's predictions and start relying on your own ability to respond to whatever comes. This shift in orientation transforms how you see the world. What once looked threatening begins to look manageable. What once appeared impossible begins to feel accessible. Fear-created illusions also warp time. They pull you out of the present moment and anchor you in imagined futures. You become so busy anticipating difficulties that you stop engaging with the actual situation in front of you. Calmness brings you back into the present, where real decisions are made and real opportunities live. The present moment is where clarity exists because it is free from the distortions of imagined outcomes. When you return to this moment, your awareness sharpens. You see life as it is, not as fear has suggested it might be. And in that state, you are far more capable of recognizing opening and possibilities that were invisible before the world begins to expand. When fear loosens its grip, suddenly ideas flow more easily. Conversations bring new insights. Encounters feel meaningful. You notice patterns that help you make sense of your circumstances. You start to see that opportunities were never absent. Only your perception was clouded. When calmness settles into your being, the fog clears. You become able to recognize what serves you, what inspires you, what aligns with your inner direction. You stop reacting to illusions and start responding to reality. And it is in this state of clarity that the path forward reveals itself, not through force, but through quiet recognition that emerges once fear's illusions no longer dominate. Your mind, the world, reflects your inner state in ways that often remain unnoticed until you begin to observe the connection between your thoughts and your experiences. A conflicted mind sees conflict everywhere because it projects its inner turbulence onto the situations it encounters. When your thoughts are shaped by fear, doubt, or restlessness, you begin interpreting even neutral events as threats, obstacles, or judgments. The environment around you does not necessarily change, but the meaning you assign to it shifts dramatically. Your perception becomes tinted by the emotional tone you carry, and without realizing it, you start navigating life through the filter of your own internal chaos. This filter magnifies challenges, distorts intentions, and feeds narrative that reinforce the tension you already feel. A calmer mind perceives the world differently, not because the circumstances have become easier, but because inner clarity allows you to interpret events without exaggeration. When you are calm, you observe instead of react. You understand instead of assume. You listen instead of defend. The emotional storms that once dictated your behavior begin to soften, and in that softening you gain access to a more accurate view of reality. This clarity influences the way you make decisions. Choices made from fear tend to be impulsive, desperate, or overly cautious, whereas choices made from calmness are measured, grounded, and aligned with your deeper values. The difference is not intellectual, it is psychological. A calm mind allows your natural wisdom to surface, while a fearful mind suppresses it beneath layers of inner noise. Your decisions shape the path you walk, and your inner state shapes your decisions. When your thoughts are scattered and dominated by anxiety, your judgment becomes clouded. You may find yourself choosing options that provide temporary comfort rather than long-term benefit, or avoiding opportunities that require courage because fear convinces you they are too risky. In this state, even small tasks feel heavy because they are approached from a place of tension. Calmness, however, transforms the way you respond to challenges. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, you begin to break situations down, see them piece by piece, and understand the steps needed to move forward. Calmness does not eliminate difficulty, but it equips you with the clarity needed to navigate it. A calm inner state also changes the way you communicate with others. When the mind is anxious, every interaction can feel like a potential confrontation. You might misinterpret neutral expressions as disapproval, or assume negative meanings where none exist. This creates misunderstandings that reinforce the belief that the world is hostile or unpredictable. But when you are calm, your perception of others becomes more balanced. You begin to recognize their intentions more accurately. You listen without defensiveness. You respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Your presence becomes steady, and others respond to that steadiness. This shift in communication opens doors that worry had previously closed, creating opportunities for cooperation, understanding, and connection. The idea that the world mirrors your inner state becomes clearer as you observe how events unfold in relation to your emotional energy. When you approach life with calm confidence, you begin to attract situations that match that energy. You notice solutions instead of problems, progress instead of stagnation. This is not about manifesting desires through wishful thinking. It is about engaging with reality from a place of psychological balance. Calmness enhances your ability to recognize patterns, anticipate outcomes accurately, and make decisions that align with your goals. The steadier your inner world becomes, the more your external world begins to reflect that steadiness. A calmer mind fosters resilience. When you are not overwhelmed by fear's narrative, you can respond to challenges with creativity and flexibility. You become more adaptable because you are no longer trapped in rigid expectations of how things should be. Instead, you respond to how things are, which is a far more effective way of navigating uncertainty. Calmness gives you room to think, to reflect, to adjust your approach when needed. Fear pushes you into narrow thinking, but calmness broadens your perspective, allowing you to see multiple pathways rather than being fixated on a single outcome. Wise decisions emerge naturally when the mind is not clouded by emotional extremes. Wisdom is not about possessing vast knowledge, it is about seeing clearly. It is the ability to discern what matters from what does not, to understand the weight of each possibility, and to act in accordance with your deeper truth rather than your immediate fears. This kind of decision-making requires inner stillness. You cannot hear your intuition when your thoughts are racing. You cannot sense the right direction when fear is shouting over your inner voice. Calmness quiets the noise, allowing intuition to emerge with greater strength. And clarity in a calm also changes your relationship with time. When you are anxious, everything feels urgent. You feel pressured to act quickly, to fix things immediately, to resolve uncertainties at once. This urgency creates mistakes, misunderstandings, and unnecessary stress. But when you are calm, time expands. You become more patient, more deliberate, more aware of the subtle timing that life naturally follows. You begin to understand that not everything requires an immediate response. Some situations need observation, not action. Some answers come only when the mind is quiet enough to receive them. The world around you often mirrors the state of your inner dialogue. If your thoughts are filled with chaos, the world seems chaotic. If your thoughts are filled with fear, the world becomes frightening. But if your inner world is calm and centered, life begins to feel more supportive even during difficult moments. You start to trust your ability to handle challenges. You develop confidence not from external achievements, but from the stability you cultivate within yourself. This confidence influences every decision you make, every step you take, and every path you choose to follow. A calm inner state is not a passive condition. It is an active form of strength, a deliberate choice to step out of the mental storms that once dictated your behavior. It gives you the ability to evaluate situations clearly, make decisions wisely, and maintain composure even when circumstances are not ideal. When calmness becomes your foundation, your life begins to reflect that foundation through better choices, healthier relationships, clearer opportunities, and a more balanced way of being. The world has not changed, your perception has shifted, and through that shift, your entire path begins to transform. Letting go of worry restores a sense of authenticity that often becomes buried beneath layers of fear, self-doubt, and imagined pressures. When worry dominates your inner world, it shapes your behavior, influences your decisions, and gradually pulls you away from the truth of who you are. You begin acting not from your genuine desires, but from your anxieties. You speak with hesitation, choose with uncertainty, and move through life as though everything requires your constant vigilance. In this state, your true self becomes obscured, hidden beneath the weight of expectations and fears that never truly belonged to you. But as you loosen your grip on worry, you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were silenced, forgotten, or overshadowed by fear's demands. Worry consumes energy at a rate that leaves you drained before you have even taken meaningful action. It demands attention without offering solutions, pulling you into mental loops that sap your vitality. Every imagined scenario, every unnecessary fear, every repetitive thought drains a portion of your inner strength. Over time, this depletion becomes so familiar that you forget what it feels like to move through life with a sense of internal freedom. When you begin letting go of worry, even gradually, you feel energy returning to you. Thoughts become clearer. Emotions settle. The constant tension in your body begins to loosen, creating space for new directions and new insights. This regained energy becomes a resource that fuels growth, creativity, and connection. As worry loses its hold, authenticity begins to rise naturally, not through effort, but through the quiet relief that follows the release of inner tension. You start to see the difference between choices made from fear and choices made from clarity. You recognize how many of your past decisions were shaped by imagined consequences rather than genuine intention. You begin to understand how often you held yourself back, not because you lacked ability, but because worry convinced you that your abilities were insufficient. In the absence of constant fear, your inner voice becomes more audible, guiding you toward actions and paths that align with your natural strengths, values, and desires. Authenticity is not something you create, it is something you uncover. It is always present beneath the noise of your worries, waiting for the moment you stop fighting yourself. When you are no longer tangled in fears about how others perceive you or what might go wrong, you gain the freedom to express yourself without distortion. You speak more honestly, you act more decisively, you engage with life from a place of sincerity rather than performance. This shift affects every aspect of your experience. Relationships become more genuine because you are no longer approaching them with hidden anxieties. Work feels more meaningful because you are not constantly second-guessing your actions. Life becomes more fluid because you are not resisting its natural flow, letting go of. Worry also strengthens your ability to face challenges from a grounded perspective. Without the weight of fear's distortions, you become more capable of seeing difficulties clearly. Instead of magnifying them, you begin breaking them down into manageable pieces. You rely less on assumptions and more on observation. When fear is no longer the driving force behind your responses, you find yourself reacting with stability, patience, and resilience. This groundedness gives you the strength to navigate uncertainty without collapsing into panic. It allows you to maintain direction even when circumstances are unpredictable. You begin to trust that you can handle whatever comes, not because everything is easy, but because you are no longer wasting your energy on imagined catastrophes. Letting go of worry aligns you with life's natural flow, which is always moving forward. Worry resists that movement. It tries to freeze the future, control outcomes, and prevent anything unfamiliar from entering your experience. It traps you in patterns of hesitation, delaying growth, and limiting possibilities. When you release this resistance, you begin to move in harmony with life rather than in opposition to it. Opportunities feel more accessible. Decisions feel less intimidating. You stop approaching the unknown with dread and begin approaching it with curiosity. This alignment is not passive, it involves trust that life will unfold in ways you can respond to. Trust that you possess the strength to adapt. Trust that you do not need to anticipate every detail to move forward. Letting go of worry does not mean ignoring practical concerns or refusing to plan. It means refusing to let fear dictate the narrative of your life. It means acknowledging that clarity comes from presence, not from mental rehearsals of worst-case scenarios. When you focus on the moment, you are actually living rather than the ones you are imagining. Your awareness deepens. You become more attuned to the subtle signals within yourself and around you. You begin to notice opportunities that you once overlooked because your mind was too busy predicting difficulties. This presence brings a sense of steadiness and purpose that worry could never provide. As authenticity strengthens, your interactions with others change. You no longer need to hide behind masks or pretend to be unaffected by fear. You no longer make decisions based on what you believe others expect from you. Instead, you act from a place of truth. People respond to this authenticity with trust, respect, and connection. Genuine expression creates deeper relationships because it invites others to be genuine as well. When worry no longer distorts your behavior, you engage with people not from a place of insecurity, but from a place of presence. Your words become clearer, your boundaries stronger, and your relationship more meaningful. Letting go of worry also heightens your creativity. Fear restricts imagination, narrowing your thinking to survival rather than exploration. It keeps you circling the same thoughts, preventing new ideas from emerging. But when you release this fear-driven tension, your mind becomes more open, flexible, and receptive. Creativity flows not because you force it, but because the obstacles to it dissolve. You start to see possibilities where you once saw limitations. You discover solutions you had never considered. You gain the confidence to try new things because you are no longer paralyzed by the fear of failure. Creativity thrives in freedom, and freedom grows in the absence of unnecessary worry. As you continue releasing worry, you notice a subtle shift within yourself, an expanding sense of inner spaciousness. This spaciousness is the absence of mental clutter, the quiet that allows your inner wisdom to speak. It is the space in which growth occurs, insight deepens, and direction becomes clearer. You realize that life feels lighter not because circumstances have changed, but because you are no longer carrying the unnecessary weight of imagined fears. You begin to understand that peace was not something to pursue, but something to allow. Something that emerges naturally when worry loosens its grip and authenticity rises to the surface.